Good evening. Certainly glad to be back with everyone tonight. It's a little foggy outside, but man, it's still warm. It's January weather like we've not seen before, that's for sure. Let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much again for the opportunity to freely gather, to freely discuss, and to freely learn about you through your word. And Lord, we just ask that you will keep your hand upon this hill. Keep the hedge of protection around our church family. Help us, Lord, in each and every way, and may each and every one of us look to you on a daily basis. One day at a time, Lord, is what we're asking for. And we need to live that way. We need to look to you for guidance each and every day. And we just ask, Lord, that you keep your arms of love wrapped around us, which we know you will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. As we get started tonight, I wanted to just revisit a little bit last week on something. I had someone ask me, said, why are you doing this? Talking about I had someone that was watching it online ask me, said, why are you doing this? And we've talked about it before, and we've talked about that we're expected. I gave you a couple of scriptures here in the last few weeks about being told, even back in Proverbs, you need to be prepared. We talked about trimming your wicks. We talked about putting on the armor of God, but being spiritually, physically able to wear that armor. And it's through being prepared. And it goes back to what Bishop was teaching last week. And that's what perseverance is. Perseverance, I don't know if any of you have ever looked at the definition or not. Interestingly, when I looked it up, it's only used one time in the Bible, in the Greek. And that's in Ephesians 6:18. And Paul uses it. And the Greek meaning of the word perseverance, and the word's actually prokastaresis is the Greek word. And it means to be constantly moving ahead, even in dire straits and with much difficulty ahead of you. That's what perseverance is. And that's what Bishop was talking about last week. And so why are we doing this? We are doing this because we are told that to prepare and to be prepared to handle what comes. Now, in saying that, don't get me wrong. There's no way we can possibly be prepared to handle everything that's coming our way. It's not going to happen. We need to understand what's coming, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the big picture, trying to keep things in focus so that we're not blindsided by stuff. We prepare the best we can, all right? I mean, take, for instance, economics. Probably right now, the best time in the world would be buying gold. Seriously. But how many of us can go out and buy substantial amounts of gold to carry us through? You can't do that. We just don't have the capacity to do that. But we can be prepared to know what's coming. And when we do that, here's the real key. And that's back to what Bishop was talking about on perseverance. You persevere and you prepare yourself so that when things do get upheaved, you're not in a fearful mode. You're prepared to go to the sound of the battle. You're not going to put your head in the sand. Good soldiers, good medical personnel, people that are trained. That's the key. They are trained, and they're trained to go to the battle. You don't run from the battle. You don't run from the noise. You go to it. And that's what we've got to be prepared to do. And through that, we talked about our candles being trimmed, our oil lamps being trimmed and being a light. That's how you're a light. You wage into the battle, and you're doing that without fear, and you're an example. You're a light to those that's around us. Okay? So that's why we're doing this. We're doing what we do so that we can be prepared to be that light and help lead people if times get tough. And we may be totally wrong. Shoot, rapture may not be 20 years from now, all right? We don't know. I mean, we do know that difficult times are coming here shortly, and whether it's really, truly the end of times, no one knows. But we do know that there's a lot of upheaval coming, and something none of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. And the appearance of it on a daily basis gets darker and darker. But we know who's in charge, we know who wins the battle, and we're preparing ourselves to move forward without fear because we know the hand of God is upon us, right? So keep that in mind. And if someone asks you, well, why are you even paying attention to this stuff? Tell them that. I'm preparing. I'm being prepared for what's coming. Very important. There's an old saying, I don't know who to attribute it to, and maybe they don't even know, but it's this. If you're attacked and you don't know your own capabilities, and you don't know the capabilities of the enemy that's attacking you, your odds of winning are about 0. Okay? If you're attacked, maybe you've got a good handle on what your capabilities are, but you know nothing about your enemy, you've got about a 50-50 chance of winning. Might as well just toss a coin. But if you know your own capabilities, and you've done your homework, and you know the capabilities of who you're fighting against, your odds go up towards 100% of winning the battle. That's why, it's, military. That's why you do reconnaissance, that's why you do intelligence, to know your enemy. So, same's true in our spiritual battle. It's no different than the battle that we're waging if you're waging a physical war. So keep that in mind. I'd like to read just a couple of scriptures here. And it just backed up on me, so we'll look it up again. I've got a new computer that I'm trying to learn. I'm going to go to Hebrews 12:1. NLT version. It says, and it's back tying into what Bishop talked about last week. This is Paul writing. It says, wherefore seeing we also are compassed about what was so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so evilly beset us. And here's the key. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. All right? Even though the word perseverance in Greek is only used one time in the Bible, there are many, many scriptures that tell you to run the good race. Paul was very good about that. It's all back to the hare and the rabbit, the hare and the tortoise. Same thing. And the thought occurred to me when I was thinking about this, we need to be aware of this with new Christians, with new believers. New believers tend to get charged up real quick, want to do a lot of things, get running hard. That's not how you run the race. And we need to be prepared to help them not do that, or to at least slow them down. Because in the old story of the hare and the tortoise, the hare took off. He thought he had it made, running fast. The old tortoise, he persevered. He put one foot in front of the other one. It's the old Chinese saying, a trip of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And that's true of this tortoise and hare. He started with the first step, and then the next. He persevered, and he ended up winning the race. So we need to remind new Christians sometimes if we see someone charging maybe a little too hard, you don't want to stop them or anything, but you want to make them aware, hey, this is a race. And you've got plenty of scriptures to go to correlate with that. So enough of that. Let's get on with our news. In the Mideast news, I talked last week the week before about Ben-Gvir, the head of Homeland Security for them. His first thing he did, of course, was show up on Temple Mount. And yeah, it caused a lot of problems. And in fact, it's still going on. Here's some of the things that happened. The UN voted on the Ben Gvir visit, saying that it was a crime against the Palestinians and against the Muslims. The United States, by the way, voted for that. The United States has said they demand, here's a demand, get this, the United States demands that Israel, Muslims only are allowed on the Mount. That's what the U.S. wants to see. Stop and think about that. Yeah. Anyhow, while I was looking at that, the UN last year voted 15 times to condemn Israel for various things. This last one, just last week, was the newest one this year. Guess how many times they voted to condemn anyone else in the world? 13 times total. Of all the rest of the world, all the rest of the countries, 13 times. 15 times they condemned Israel. And, you know, look at the persecution. The thing that's happened, it's like I told you, you've got the far right in Israel now, and you're having major demonstrations out in the street. They've got, this has thoroughly widened the gap between the left and the right in Israel, just as what our elections have done with Trump and everything here in the United States. The gap just gets wider and wider. Same thing's happening in Israel. The left's out in the streets causing riots. They're actually rioting. And they're using anything for an excuse. This thing with Ben Gvir is just an example. They're very split right now, and it's a very tumultuous time. Netanyahu's got his hands full. So keep your ears on what's going on in Israel. They've got some serious problems. The other thing in the Mideast over there right now, Russia's moving new equipment into Syria. It's kind of funny. They were kind of drawing stuff out. I think now we see why. They were drawing some of their old equipment out of Syria. They're replacing it with new stuff. Some of their high-end rockets, and they're sending a squadron of Su-35s, that's their top-of-the-line fighter, to Syria. And the reason being, they're just, I don't know, Iran is trying to move a lot of their higher tech stuff that can attack Israel into Syria. And Israel right now, the last several weeks have been bombing the airports. They'll come in, they'll go to offload the cargo, and Israel's been going in and wiping it out as it's being unloaded. And this has been going on for several weeks. So that just gives you an idea of the tension that's created there. Other than that, in the Israel, as far as Iran protests, look like they may get sparked a little higher because they just sentting some more people to death for protesting, and the people are raising their arms again. So it could be a very interesting next week or so in Iran. The other thing on Iran, and this kind of keys into South America, there are, where did I leave that? They are moving, or every day there's three to four flights of cargo planes from Iran to Venezuela. And the interesting thing is, there was a notice here a couple weeks ago, or kind of not a notice, but a little news blurb that, and I think I mentioned it in here, that some of the higher ups in Iran are seeking possible asylum in Venezuela because maybe they understand the country's going to come undone and they're going to have to get out of the country. Well, the interesting thing on these cargo planes, they can't find out exactly what's on them, but they've been spying the best they can, and they're unloading household goods, cars, things of that nature. And there's 3 to 4 of these every day coming from Venezuela, or coming from Iran into Venezuela, cargo planes. So evidently that kind of gives you a thought that things in Iran's really going to turn around too, that, you know, they maybe see the handwriting on the wall. I thought that was interesting. Up in the European war, the Russia-Ukraine thing, of course, still going on. It's a NATO-Russian war now. I mean, Ukraine's just the battlefield with, you know, France is sending tanks, UK sending Bradley vehicles. United States is actually, they put notice out yesterday, they're bringing Ukrainians here to the States to train them on the Patriot missiles that we're sending over. They're in Oklahoma right now. They're already there. The Ukrainians are in Oklahoma training on our equipment. So it's surpassed being a war, just Ukraine and Russia. But Russia shows no signs of backing down. They've made some inroads this week there in eastern Ukraine, and there'll probably be a big battle in the Donetsk province here in the next couple of days. And Russia's gaining a little more ground. For one thing, if they keep this up, just from an attrition basis, Russia can outlast Ukraine because there's a lot more Russians. The army's much larger, much bigger country, much more resources. And so I still believe Russia's going to do what they want to do over there. And when they get to where they want it done, they'll quit. But at the same time, that in the European Union, since all this has happened, you've got countries like Croatia, you've got Finland, Sweden, a bunch of them wanting to join the European Union. Well, that's kind of a fractured mess, because take Sweden, for example. Sweden wants to join. Turkey has to vote to let them in. Turkey's saying, we're not going to vote for you because of the way you handle some of your terrorists. And so there's a lot of political stuff going back and forth, back and forth. There's been a lot of the European countries have tempered how they feel because they still need energy. And there's still some energy coming out of Russia into Europe, and these people don't want to do without it. The energy crisis in Europe has not occurred yet. It'll really be this next year. And an example, the real shortages are yet to come. One reason is this: due to the price increases. I don't know how many of you know the difference between natural gas and propane, liquid natural gas. It's the same product, but to make propane or liquid natural gas, you have to take the gas and process it. You have to condense it, you have to cool it before you can ship it. You have to get it in a liquefied basis. That adds cost. LNG, liquid natural gas and propane is not as cheap as natural gas. And when you shut off the natural gas pipelines, what they're doing, they're circumventing that by shipping propane and LNG, but the price goes up substantially. Transportation cost plus the processing cost. So EU's in a real mess, with the energy problem. Example would be Cofigo, C-O-F-I-G-O, is a big French food company. It's kind of like it's a major food processor for France and Europe. They ship all over Europe. They're closing their doors. Reason being, they've had a 10-fold increase in energy cost. They can't afford it. They've shut the doors. They've already shut down and let people go. And we're seeing more of that in industry in Europe. And that's why in Europe, the unemployment rate's going to skyrocket. Industry's coming to a halt because they can't stand the energy cost increase that they're seeing. So that over there is just really starting, but it's a real mess. Right now there's 20 countries in the EU that have given up their currency to the EU dollar, European dollar. What they mean by that is Croatia was the latest, they did it this last week. What they're saying is, okay, European Union, we're part of the European Union. We will use we'll use your dollar, and we'll quit using Croatian dollars. And that's what they decided to do. There's 20 countries now that have done that. They use the euro marks. And there is another example of a step towards economic control of one currency, one person controlling the currency, or one country at this time. Eventually it'll be one person controlling the currency. But there's just another, we talk about these little small baby steps we take about every week. The Australian Defence Minister, I watched a video on him, said that most people are unprepared for day-long blackouts in Europe, and that 1/3 of them could not take care of themselves if they had to. That's the defense minister estimating what's going on. Of course, the government, and we're going to see the same thing here again. You wait and see. We're going to be printing stimulus checks again. They're already doing it in California. California is already printing stimulus checks again. We're supposed to, that's what's caused the terrible inflation that we're seeing now. And they'd like to make you think inflation's under control, but don't believe it is. We'll find out. Hope I'm wrong, but I can tell you this for sure. Now's not the time to be borrowing money. If you don't go out and borrow money if you don't have to. It's not time to do that. But here in the United States, and they're already seeing it more in Europe, is that Spain and Italy, they're in the process right now handing out stimulus checks. And why do they do that? They do that to keep the people calm. The people are out of work. Inflation's hitting them. They can't afford to buy stuff. People start rioting because of that. We've talked about that before. And so what you see now, the way to calm everybody down is you give them money. But that's got a payback sometime down the road. And they keep kicking the can down the road. And one of these days, the chickens come home to roost. And it appears that we are headed into a worldwide recession. All the major economic companies and banks are all predicting that now. We thought we saw it last fall coming, and I think we're right. They're all predicting now that 2023 is going to be a tough time, economic-wise. But as we talked a week ago, they've got to destroy the economies of all the major countries in order to do a reset and move things to a digital dollar. And it'll be you'll have a digital yuan, you'll have a digital dollar, you'll have a digital euro note, and eventually that'll all merge into one down the road. The thing of it is, we are watching the greatest transfer of world power in history. You're seeing it. We're living it. And by that I mean the United States is no longer the world cop. We're not. Before something would happen and all of a sudden we show up with our people and kind of straighten the mess out the way we think it ought to be, and that's sometimes a problem. That's what started this whole mess in Ukraine. We went over there in 2014, helped get that mess started by thinking we were getting them moving towards the direction we thought they ought to be. And that's what started this whole Russian-Ukraine mess to begin with. We were part of that. Actually, we were the causative agent of it. So, but those days are over. It appears that no longer does the United States or any of the Western countries for that matter have the guts or the want to go somewhere else in the world and be the cop. So with that in mind, we've talked about how China and Russia sees this opportunity to remove the Western, and especially the United States part of the Western world, as being the power hub. And we're watching it unfold right in front of our eyes. It's the greatest transfer of power in the world history. Very interesting. Along with that, and then with that, you've heard me talk about that a couple of times here. You aren't seeing binary agreements with countries now. You're seeing 3 and 4, right? Like I talked about BRIC, and we talked about there's the Japan, Australian, United States, New Zealand alliance to try to counter China and the South Pacific. You're seeing multiples. You're not just seeing 2 countries getting together and hashing things out. You're seeing multiple countries. And why is this important? It's because we're told that eventually the world will be, we think, in 10 regions. You're going to have 10 regional areas. The Bible tells us there will be 10 kings that will be working with the Antichrist, under his tutelage. And so, we don't know this for a fact, it's just opinion, but the thing of it is, it appears that those things are starting to happen. You're going to see the Americas, you're going to see Canada. What happened this week? You got Biden, Trudeau, and what's his name, Ortez, in Mexico. They had their meeting this week after Biden went down to El Paso to view the border. Don't get me started on that. They went down there and rounded up all the homeless people off the streets, made it look nice and pretty, so when Biden come in, he didn't see the real mess. So nothing's going to change, folks. But here's the thing. Guess who's not going to miss an opportunity here? The WEF, your World Economic Forum. They're getting ready to meet in Davos next week, January 14, 16 to 20, sometime next week. They're going to meet in Davos. They've already put out their top 5 things on their agenda. Here they are. They're going to deal with energy, food shortages, and economies. What did I tell you here a week or so ago? What's the 3 major things Henry Kissinger said? You control the energy, or you control the food, you control the country, you control the energy, you control the region, you can control the money, you control the economy, you control the world. And that is very, very true. Number 2, new technologies that are available. They're keen on all these new technologies. One of the guys that's one of the primary advisors to the WEF on new technology came out this last week. I haven't listened to all of it. He's talking about how they think that humans are hackable. You can hack a human. All you got to do is get an implant, and you can hack a human. That's what these people are. This is the top advisor to the WEF. They're going to stress social issues. I don't know whether you're aware or not, there's new drugs coming out, new pharmaceuticals, and guess what it's keyed to? For people to deal with stress. And like we talked last week, we are now in a constant stress environment. It's not going to go away. There will be stress after stress after stress. Something new is going to happen every time you turn around. And the drug companies are getting ready to make hay with this, of course. But this is the World Economic Forum. They're going to deal with it too. And they want to come up with a new system to deal with a multipolar world. And it's back to what I was talking again a few minutes ago. They're seeing that you have different regions set up, different poles. You have different communities around the world, and they're wanting to come up with a new system to deal with that. I was talking about, we've talked before about having potential domino type effect on these economies around the world. It looks very likely that the very first one that may fail is going to be Pakistan. Pakistan's in tremendous dire straits. It looks like they could fail as a country. They could divide into 4 different entities. You say, well, what's the big deal with Pakistan? Well, Pakistan, pretty good sized country. They're about 23rd economically, largest, most important in the world. They are 5th in population. They are 6th strongest military, and they got nukes. They got a lot of nukes. And so because they've been afraid all this time of India. India and Pakistan both went nuclear to have a parity between the two of them because they are historical enemies, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. But Pakistan looks like it looks like in Africa, Ethiopia is on the verge, and Italy's not too far behind. Italy's suffered terribly with COVID. Italy has had a tremendous drought. The country's really having some severe problems. And now, of course, they've got this energy load put on top of them with the Russian-Ukraine war. So as far as China, not much has changed. It looks like the initial COVID has peaked, maybe. They got a lot of sick people. It looks like they're going to lose about 1 million deaths. I saw a thing today where they're burning bodies out in open fields because the crematoriums can't take care of them. But that'll pass. It'll wipe through and it'll pass. But their economy is going to be in tatters. That's been going on for months now. Because you notice, even back last year before Christmas, I was talking about shipping containers sitting empty. You go to the West Coast and you look at the shipments coming into the harbors here from China. There's no backup, there's no waiting. There's not much stuff being shipped out of China for two reasons. One, we're starting to slow down on what we're buying. In other parts of the world too, especially Europe, slowing down buying because of inflation and because of you're starting to see people get laid off. Here in the States, one thing I was going to mention, 646% increase in layoffs in the United States in the tech sector. Yeah, stop and think about that. 646% increase in layoffs. And that's going to spill over. Like I was talking to you all before, these things are going to spill over to us. It just takes time. It's not going to happen in a week or a month, but these things are spilling over. So anyhow, that's pretty much it, Bishop. So we're, I would mention that I was kind of proud that a handful of Republican conservatives stood up in the House of Representatives and held the line. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. They voted to defund IRS, that 87,000 increase or whatever it was. Senate will kill it. Nothing's going to happen. Here's the thing. Nothing's going to happen other than there's going to be a lot of bluster in the House of Representatives. They're probably going to bring out a lot more information on this, illegal surveillance and the deep state that we have of government, which is obvious now. It's no longer a conspiracy. Pastor and I was talking at lunch yesterday. There's no longer a conspiracy to say that there's a deep state running this country and has been for quite some time. They're proven. These things are proven now. But nothing's going to come out of it. It's like I mentioned before, Republican, Democrat doesn't make any difference. They're both working towards the same end, just taking different paths to get there. Nothing's going to change. And we're going to bear the brunt of it, but we know what's coming and we're going to be prepared for it. And like Pastor said, like Bishop said last week, persevere.